In this video, we're going to review the market approach to valuing a business using MoneySoft Business Valuation Specialist. As we mentioned on our website, the market approach utilizes market prices of comparable companies to approximate the value of a company. In the valuation methods under the market approach, the price for a comparable company is expressed as a multiple of various measures of profitability and financial position. The price multiple from the comparable company is then applied to the respective measures of profitability and/or financial position of the subject company to determine the value of the subject company. The market approach in BVS gives you the flexibility to handle market data from multiple sources with varying levels of detail and guides you away from mistakes that are common in the market approach. These mistakes are common when you use transaction data right out of the box. They're also common when you fail to recognize the difference between stock and asset transaction multiples, and when you don't pay attention to the elements that are included as well as excluded in the transactions and in the company information used to arrive at a multiple. Another problem is the failure to use this same information when converting multiples to equity level values. Following the straightforward approach in BVS will help you avoid these errors. The methods in the market approach are categorized as either total market theory, transaction by transaction, the guideline public company method, and the FactSet merger stat review method, which is somewhat of a hybrid based on a composite PE multiple for a given industry sector. Total market theory, as the name implies, considers all transactions for a given industry as representative of the market as a whole. In this method, there are a fairly large number of transactions for given industries, mostly for smaller businesses. The challenge is to develop a statistical picture of the market and correlate the business to that market data. BizComps and the IBA databases fall into this category. When applying the transaction by transaction method, the challenge is to identify transactions that are comparable to the business being valued. Here the focus is on the quality of the comparison. There may be fewer transactions, but there are more multiples. Plus, stock and asset transactions are included in the source data. Done Deals and Pratt Stats data usually include enough detail to use this method. Also, the other data source is user-defined and can accommodate data from any other sources. These different methods have many parts in common, so for the sake of time, we'll demonstrate using Done Deals. Let's take a look. This is the multi-view for Done Deals. All the different data sources have a very similar organization. Here we're looking at the data input form. This is where you build your database of transaction information. You can import data from Done Deals and BizComps if you've purchased these databases from MoneySoft. Otherwise, you have the flexibility to enter transaction details or just price multiples for each transaction. There are a few important points to cover here. You have the option to make adjustments to the price and to the benefit streams as needed based on your research of specific deals. For example, you may discover that a portion of the price is in deferred payments, so you might adjust the price based on the present value of the future payments. BVS always recalculates the price multiples to reflect any adjustments and prevent any miscalculation in the data source from creeping into your valuation. It's very important to segregate stock and asset transactions because the price is calculated differently. In addition, the process of converting multiples to equity values is different for stock and asset deals. Mixing them is a mistake that BVS helps you avoid. You do, however, have the option later to reconcile values for stock and asset deals by blending them. Here are the results of the statistical analysis that BVS gives you for each multiple. The stats help guide your selection of multiples by giving you information about the statistical reliability of each set of multiples and the distribution of multiple values. If you've already analyzed and selected your multiples outside of BVS, you can bypass the previous screens and simply enter your selected multiples here. Of course, you won't get any statistical analysis if you do this. Here's where your selected price multiples are applied to the company's benefit streams. The important points to highlight here are, for most data sources, the multiple times the benefit stream results in an invested capital value. BVS then converts these invested capital values to equity values by deducting liabilities. Each data source has a different definition of which assets are typically transferred in a transaction. If the company owns other assets that are not typically transferred, BVS adds the value of these other assets separately in the equity value calculation. You have the flexibility to make adjustments to include and exclude assets from this process and adjust their values as needed. You can make an adjustment for the level of value to bring each value to an enterprise level equity value. This is common in the guideline public company method, where the prices can be based on a minority share price, and the minority value needs to be adjusted up to a control level. For those data sources that have both stock and asset transactions, you have the option to reconcile the values by blending them as shown here. The guideline public company method is similar to done deals, except that all data is based on equity prices of publicly traded companies as opposed to transaction data. These are all equity level observations. And the price of an equity is based upon a single share, which is a non-controlling interest. So it's often necessary to include a premium for control, so the indicated value here is on par with all of the different valuation methods. The other data source is open for you to include market multiples from any source. The multi-view controls the separate stock and asset transactions, and you simply identify each transaction and include the related multiples. BVS calculates the statistics and converts to equity values in the same basic way as done deals. Here you can include the industry average price to earnings multiple for merger and acquisition transactions that's quoted in FactSet MergerStat Review. Then BVS calculates the equity value using the same process as in all the other market methods. You have the flexibility to select a value conclusion within a given database for stock deals, for asset deals, for blended stock and asset deals, or select an overall database conclusion. On top of that, you can combine all of the different data sources into a single market approach conclusion. The flexibility in the market approach lets you use market data from a variety of sources. BVS properly applies the data to arrive at value indications that are all on the same level. Now we've covered the asset approach and the market approach. The last one is the income approach, and that's the focus of our next session. See you there.